My game of the day from round 9 of the candidates tournament is Fabiano Caruana with white against Ding Liren. It's the battle of the 25-year-olds. Fabiano has obviously had a good tournament so far. He's in the lead by half a point ahead of Mamedyarov. And Ding Liren so far has drawn all his games. But I think that shows that he's turning into a really tough competitor. And he has had a fantastic year. He won the Moscow Grand Prix tournament in last May. He got to the final of the World Cup, and that's a real marathon event, before losing to Aronian, of course. But I think he showed in that tournament how mentally strong he is, actually. And I think he's showing that in this tournament so far as well, actually. So here we go. We joined the game after 27 moves, and Caruana is better. You can see that his knight is on a nice square here. The rook has an open file. This is potentially a weak pawn as well, but it's very difficult to make progress because, well, the entry squares on the c file are covered by the bishop and the knight and the rook, of course, here. So it's really hard to break into black's position, and that knight is a very good piece, supported by the pawn here. So what do? Well, this is a kind of Magnus type position, actually, where you have control, but there's no clear way forward. But you have to improve your position just little by little. So you don't think, okay, what's the goal here? You don't think of some plan 25 moves deep. You just think, how can I improve my position a little bit? That's the most important thing. And the first thing that Fabiano did was to squeeze on the king side. Excellent move. So this basically just starts to cramp black's kings, so that if white ever does break through, then it could be serious for the king. In the meantime, black can do nothing really. Well, okay, he advanced his queenside pawns, but I mean that could be dealt with very easily. In fact, after the game, Ding thought, well, both players thought actually, that maybe he should have played h5 here. And that would give the king a little bit more room. Now white has a choice between playing f3 or g5. The problem is if you play g5, that sometimes that knight may be able to hop around to f5. So that already gives white a tough decision. But in the game, Ding pushed the pawn here. Okay, it's knocked the bishop back. Now he's looking for counterplay on the queen side. But h5. So Fabiano has just made a little bit of progress here. You can see that pawn blocks out the bishop. It's a classic squeeze, and the king isn't as good as before. But there's no obvious breakthrough. But okay, rook here. Don't panic. Let's just bring the king up the board a little bit. So just a slight improvement. That, of course, claims this square. And now if black gets too frisky and brings the rook down, then you can see how dangerous this is. Then white breaks through, and, well, actually black is in danger of being checkmated here. So you can see how restricted black is, particularly after the advance of this pawn. So king f8. Now there is a lot of shuffling goes on, because it's clear that Fabiano wasn't exactly sure what to do. But then again, Ding can't really do much in this position either. So this was a case of, well, Caruana just wanted to get to the time control. He was running a bit short of time. Certainly less time than Ding had. So Ding realizes he just can only sit there and is just shuffling his pieces back and forth. Okay, f3 is nice. That just protects the king a little bit. And so this is move 40. They've reached the first time control. And then Caruana could think what happens next. And actually he came up with a very nice plan. So he had time to think things through. He had an extra 50 minutes on the clock and came up with this idea of putting the king on g5. By the way, once again, if black tries to make a break with the rook, then something very nasty happens. So, well, this is just a fun variation, but let me show you how black's king ends up in a mating net. So here you can see how cramped it is. And now rook takes bishop threatened, and if the bishop moves, then rook f8 is checkmate. There you go. Black lacks space. This is black's problem. So king h4 played. Now what's the big idea? Big idea is to put the king on g5 and potentially to play h6 to prise open the position. Okay, there's an obvious defense to this, and that's to play h6. And now sometimes that square is available for the knight. So a long maneuver to get there, but very sensible. It just gives white a few more options. And after the game, Caruana said, well, I wanted to provoke h6, but he also said I wasn't entirely sure why I did it. Well, it worked out pretty well. Let's have a look. So again, black is just reduced to shuffling, and white resets. But now Fabi came up with a good idea. He saw that the e-pawn was potentially vulnerable. And so he shuffled his pieces around, and now he starts to attack here. You can see how useful it is to have that pawn here, not only restricting the king, but restricting the bishop's movement as well. Pawn attacked. Bishop moves here, and now rook e1. Now, two pieces attacking the pawn, starting to look a bit critical, because you don't really want to play rook e8, because if white's rook breaks through, it's not just the 8th rank, but the 7th rank could be vulnerable. So here, well, Ding, this shows how tough he is. He came up with an excellent defense. He played 97, and Caruana praised him after the game for this move. The point is, if that pawn is taken, whoops, that's the game move. If the pawn is taken by the knight, then black plays here. So the bishop is attacked. So threat, bishop takes knight, and then taking the bishop. So the bishop moves. And now rook e8. So you can see there's a pin here. Well, white gets out of that with a check. But now white can't avoid a trade of rooks. And although white has won a pawn, in fact, this is going to liquidate to a draw, because the bishop is going to come here and take this pawn. So, bishop b2, Caruana had to just wait for a little bit and kind of rethink things. Knight here, and now f4. Well, once you play f4, this starts to get a little bit double-edged. It could be that this is the prelude to being able to make a break with g5 and then g6, but okay, watch out for the h-pawn sometimes. So, but also it sometimes stops e5. So that those are the positive things. The downside is it could expose the king along the 3rd rank when the position breaks open. Rook a2 played, hitting the bishop, so now that's defended. And now Ding sensed that he had to break out. You know, it could be that the rook is going to shuffle here and be able to get to the 7th rank. So Ding broke with e5. So now things really starting to happen. So somehow, once the position breaks, the nature of the game changes, and it becomes far more about tactics and less about maneuvering. So let's see. Bishop takes pawn. So material still even. but now there's a passed pawn to be reckoned with. Fabi pushes. And now the computer defense here is knight e7, and it still thinks that black is okay here. Well, quite possibly. We don't have time to go into the ins and outs of that one, but let me show you what happened in the game. Rook a7. Well, this looks logical. I mean, I guess the point of playing knight e7 instead of rook a7 is that by maintaining the rook on a2, of course, that pegs white back a little bit because white would have to take care of the bishop. In any case, rook a7 played, knight c5, hitting the bishop. Now, this is starting to look critical because if the bishop comes here, then we're going to play this move. Okay, watch out for an e7, and if here, to bring the rook to e8, to blockade the e-pawn, then white plays rook f1. Now this is a very important theme over the next few moves. So white is just going to play rook f7 and hit this one, and if that pawn is taken, then knight check with a fork, winning the bishop. And that's why after knight c5, Ding played bishop c4 to cover the f1 square. But now knight d7. You can see that with this pawn here, then black's king could well get caught in a mating net. Now, there is a threat, e7. So for example, if king g8, then e7 is a winning move because after this is taken, then the rook protects the knight, and this is coming very soon too. So Ding now played a remarkable defensive move. Remember, if he blockades here, then there's every chance that the rook is going to be able to break in. He played bishop b5. This is a fantastic idea. So if e7, then black takes, and now you play rook takes, defended by the bishop. That's the point of bishop b5, and the rook defends g7 through a kind of x-ray through the rook. Now here, actually, Caruana misses a win. Now, this is a real computer move. Rook e3, I mean, this is a bizarre move. He played knight f8, but rook e3, the computer tells us that this is a win. And it's such a slow motion threat that I'm not surprised that Caruana overlooked this. I should say he was also running short of time. Well, in that case, it really is impossible to spot moves like this. It's, as I said, it's a real slow motion threat. So, well, black actually can't do very much here. And after bishop a4, rook f3, and the rook is going to come down here. Or if, well, rook a8, let's have a look at this. So this is quite good fun. So if black tries to defend the g7 square with the rook, now there's a threat to play knight f6. Obviously that pawn is pinned. So if the king drops, and now the triumph of the squeeze, that gets taken, and h6, and then you get a take here, and knight f6, and so on. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so back here in the real world, Caruana played knight f8, which looks like somehow a very natural move to put the knight here, and you want to try and force through e7. And, well, Caruana admitted after the game that if black plays rook a8, he said he didn't really see what to do. And, well, the computer backs that up, but actually it's impossible to break this blockade. But Ding played what seems like a very natural move, and he blockaded the pawn on the 7th rank, not the 8th. And here, Fabi played what he thought was a winning move, and he's right. Rook a1. and this was completely missed by Ding. Caruana said he thought he was winning immediately. He should be. So what's the big idea? Well, if rook takes rook, then we give a check and you win a piece. Simple as that. And if, let's say, rook b7, then it's the triumph of the squeeze, because black's king gets done like that. That's checkmate. But Ding, incredibly, managed to keep his cool, and he found a defense. Knight here. This holds together, at least for the moment. Of course, you know, the moves you're looking at here are e7. But actually, king f7 just keeps everything tight. And this was the final move of the time control at move 60. And Caruana found the best move, rook d1. Just keeping the rook active and preparing perhaps at some point to penetrate on d7. King h7, best move from Ding. And rook d5, hitting the bishop. And bishop a4. Now, here again, it's the computers help us out, but well, Caruana only had 15 minutes to consider this position properly. Not very much time at all. And the win here is extremely difficult. So, computer alert, rook d2 is actually the winning move. And the idea is to bounce around and come down to either the 7th or the 8th. And you get to the king, basically. Okay, it begs one question. If you want to get to the f file, surely white should just be doing this immediately. Well, in that case, bishop c2, hitting the rook, and in this case you can just eliminate the knight. And incredibly important, of course, that rook is defended by the knight. Okay, so let's come back here. So not rook f5. Let's go with the computer move rook d2. Now it's such a slow motion threat, but actually black has no defense here. For example, well, let's try bishop b5 first of all. So rook here. We want to go all the way down. Bishop d3. All right, so rook f7 not possible because this gets taken. So we give a check. And now we come to d7. And basically the threat is to come down to f7. Sometimes you can come to f8 as well, but f7 and crash through on g7. So that wins. Or what else have we got? We've got knight e7. We give a check. And in this case, it's rook d8 is the winning move. Threat, knight g6 followed by rook h8 mate. And if knight c6, this is very nice. You can play knight d7. And if that's taken, then e7 and the pawn goes through. If rook takes, you make a queen. If on e8, if bishop takes, then you take the knight and get a queen that way. In any case, in this position, that pawn is going to roll through. So rook d2 is a winning move, but Fabi played king f4 instead. So black is back in the game, incredibly, after this move. Although black can't achieve very much here. In fact, they could repeat the position, but Fabiano couldn't see how to make progress here and played g5. And this is kind of a last roll of the dice, because this could, well, simply let the king out of the box. And here black should, I mean, this is a tough thing to do. The computer tells us that black should simply wait. But instead, Ding took and rook takes. And now this is getting serious again because there's some very interesting ideas with h6. So knight here, and here is where Caruana missed his last chance. He could have played knight f8. Whoops. Could have played knight f8. That was the move he played in the game. Knight f8. h6. Obviously, well, we want to take on g7, and after king takes knight, h7, and you get a queen on the next turn. And there's no defense. So, for example, knight takes, check, then the king shuffles to the side, and there's still no defense to getting a queen on the next turn, and white wins. So, incredible. Fabiano at that point had about 2 or 3 minutes on the clock, and he said after the game, it's a pretty simple tactic, and I had a few minutes, so I should have found it. So he was very, very frank after the game. But he seemed pretty relaxed actually after the game. The game finished like this: rook e5, bishop e8, excellent move. So that will blockade the e-pawn and in some cases threatens to eliminate the knight. And here, Caruana offered a draw. I think he realised he was losing control of the position. Now, it should be a draw, but in any case, Ding accepted. Possible continuation might be here. And you could simply play rook e6 in this position. It's very hard for black to make progress. Or you could do this, like this, and take here. Okay, this is a flashy way to make a draw, and that is going to end up as a draw. That's kind of a bit ridiculous. I suspect that Fabi would have just held the position with rook e6 actually. Well, what's an extraordinary game, full of twists and turns, and Caruana came so close to winning. But credit to Ding for playing so tenaciously, and in some cases finding incredible defences. So that leaves the scores after 9 rounds. Fabiano Caruana has 6 points. Mamedyarov has 5.5. Grishuk has 5. Ding and Karyakin has 4.5. Karyakin defeated Kramnik, who seems to be in self-destruct mode at the moment, which is a shame to see. There's a rest day on Wednesday. However, on Thursday is a big game. Mamedyarov with white against Caruana with black. I look forward to that.